All right. Hi, my name is Gift Egwuenu, and I'm very excited to be here at NDC London for the first time. Today, I am going to be talking about how you can automate the browser using Workers Browser Rendering API. I'm sure most of you, this is the first time you're hearing this. It's a mouthful, so for the rest of the talk, I'm going to refer to this as just Rendering API. Like I said, my name is Gift. I currently work as a developer advocate at Cloudflare. You can find me on Twitter or X, as people call it now, at LauraGift_. So I'd like to start this talk with a story. This is actually from personal experience. How many of you here are familiar with housing crisis? For context, I'm based in Amsterdam, right? But I want to believe that a lot of cities right now currently have housing crisis where it's so difficult to find an apartment. In the Netherlands, for example, it takes about roughly 1 to 3 months to be able to find an apartment in the city. That's compared to like previous years when you can just find an apartment and view it and pay for it. This is a problem especially for expats or people that are like moving between cities and they need accommodation. So 2 years ago, I was in a situation where I needed to move to Amsterdam from a different city, and I had a particular apartment in mind where I wanted to, live at. And now the thing is, because there is shortage and housing crisis, it could take you about 2 months to be able to find a slot on this website. So essentially, it's a housing complex that allows you, go for a viewing, and if you see an apartment that is available and you like it, or you just pay on the website. So there is not a lot of back and forth process involved compared to like going directly to the landlord, for example. So I figured it would be good to try to see if I can live here. So what did I do? I went to the website, and unfortunately, I saw that all apartments are currently booked. There is no availability at the time. So what did I eventually do? So what they do is they update every week if there is an actual apartment available. So every week at around 12 on Wednesday, I will go to the website, refresh the page, check, I'll see, for context, if there is an apartment, the get notified changes to available. So I'll do that over and over and over for like a month before I was able to find one that I eventually paid for. Now that took me a month, and thinking about browser automation and the problem that I had 2 years ago, I figured if I knew, I would have done something about it that would make my life easier. So how can I solve this specific problem that I had? And mind you, a friend of mine actually went to do this, and he got an apartment in 2 hours, right? So what he did was, not specifically using rendering API, but for context, it's very similar. What he did was he wrote a script that would check the website at a specific time every hour. So whenever there's an apartment, he'll get a notification, and then he was able to get an apartment in 2 hours. So how do I solve this problem if I was to be in that situation again? What I would do is I'll write an automation script that would do the work of checking the website every time for me. And this is possible with the browser rendering API. I'll tell you a bit more about what that is as we go on with the talk. But essentially, what I did was I built this very small proof of concept where I am using the browser rendering API to navigate to the website, and then what I'm then doing is checking if there's actually availability and send myself a notification, right? So for me, it saves me time, saves me the hassle of having to check and not seeing an apartment to get. But yeah, this is just me reminiscing and saying, if I had known, this is what I would have done, right? So this is one of the examples of how you can actually use browser automation, not just for yourself as a developer, but also in your personal life. I would also share some examples of how you can actually use it, use cases, and also show you demos of how to build automation into the browser. Some other common use cases that I've seen is, for example, I've seen people take screenshots of their web pages to share on social media. So if you have a blog, for example, what you can do is use the browser rendering API to take a screenshot, and then whenever you share a URL to social media, that could be your thumbnail, right? I've also seen people use this to report bugs on their websites. Like if there is a bug, they can take a screenshot of what part of the website has a bug and send it to the front-end team. So these are different use cases of how the browser rendering API works. But before I get into that, the underlying thing I would like to get to know from the room. Is anyone here familiar with Cloudflare Workers? Okay, that's good. Good. So for other people that are not familiar, I would like to start with a primer because this is essentially building up onto what browser rendering API is. So what is Cloudflare Workers? Cloudflare Workers provides a serverless execution environment for you to run your applications, whereas you don't have to configure or maintain infrastructure. So everything is done for you. You just have to focus on writing code. And the cool thing about Cloudflare Workers is you can write it in TypeScript, in JavaScript, in Rust, and very soon you'll be able to write Cloudflare Workers in Python as well. So it gives you the ability to, focus on actually writing code and leaving all the, infrastructure parts and leaving it to the platform to configure for you. So this is an example Cloudflare Workers script. What this does is it's exporting a default function, and in there, what I've passed in, I am sending it an object with the data about this conference. So I have the conference data object right there. Let's see if I can hover out to it. Yeah. And then what I'm then doing after that is I'm basically returning this response back to the browser. So I'm just giving it a JSON object and sending it back to me. This is a very baseline of what a Cloudflare Workers script can do. Of course, you can do way more than that with Workers, but I'm just trying to show you what the syntax looks like and also what you can do with it. Because some of you here are not familiar with it, I would like to recommend that you check out the Workers Playground. Let me just show you what that looks like. So if you're getting started with Cloudflare Workers and you want to see how the platform works, test things, also if you like to debug your application, this is actually a very cool way of doing that without having to set up anything. This is, if you go to workers.cloudflare.com/playground, you can play around with the platform, right? So I basically copied over my scripts into the tab here, and I'm going to run it. Actually, I already did, but I'll try to run it again. And you can see okay, let's wait for a bit. Okay, maybe the Wi-Fi today is not as fast as I expected. Try that again. Okay, it works, so I'll just do this one more time. No idea why that's not working, but I think we'll move forward. I'll have opportunities to show you actually in my own browser as we go on with the presentation. But what I was about to just show you there was actually running it on the browser and seeing the response returned. So moving on, the meat of this talk is about browser rendering API. So essentially what it is it's a tool that allows developers to programmatically control and interact with headless browser instance and also creates automation flows for their application and products, right? How many of you here are familiar with Puppeteer? That's good. So if you're trying to do anything around browser automation, you possibly would have used this tool or possibly heard about it. So Puppeteer is a Node.js library that provides an abstraction of the Chrome DevTools to allow you instrument different tasks. So you can inspect the browser, you can debug the browser, you can ask it to do specific things. Puppeteer currently runs in headless mode by default. You can also set it up to run an actual Chrome or Chromium browser. The underlying thing here is that it uses, under the hood, uses the Chrome DevTools protocol, which exposes different APIs like the browser, the page that you can now use within Puppeteer. So how does this connect to Cloudflare Workers? The browser rendering API essentially is running Puppeteer under the hood, right? Remember the previous slide that I shared, the Chrome DevTools protocol? So the Chrome DevTools protocol allows for tools to instrument, inspect, and debug Chromium, right? So at Cloudflare, we forked the Puppeteer repo and patched it to ensure that we can connect to Cloudflare Workers. Why did we do this? Why can't you just use Puppeteer? The reason being that Puppeteer can only run in a Node.js environment, whereas Cloudflare runs in the Workers runtime environment. So it's impossible for you to use Puppeteer within Workers. So we are trying to enable developers building on Workers to be able to do similar things that they can do with Puppeteer within Cloudflare Workers. So that's essentially what the browser rendering API is. Another interesting thing is whatever you can do with Puppeteer, so all the Puppeteer APIs, you can also do with the Workers rendering API. I'll show you examples. So if you've used Puppeteer, you see that they're very, there are so many similarities between, it's basically the same thing, but it's running on a different runtime. And how did this come about? Rendering API was born out of internal need within the company, right? So we had a lot of developers that actually wanted to do or build tools that involve browser automation, but they were limited because of what I mentioned about Puppeteer running on a Node.js environment as opposed to running within Workers. So for example, we have the Cloudflare Radar URL scanner. So Cloudflare Radar is currently a website that collects trends from the internet, and they shipped a feature called the Cloudflare Radar URL scanner, where you can go in there, put in a URL, and then what happens is the scanner will take a screenshot of your web page and check for trends or metrics and return that to you. So the process of going to take a screenshot, that's actually Workers rendering API happening there, and underneath that, that's actually Puppeteer, because you can take a screenshot. For example, you can run end-to-end tests using Puppeteer. So this is an example of how we are using the browser rendering API. I'll show you other examples as we go on with the talk. But how does it all work, right? The rendering API combines the power of Cloudflare Workers and something called remote browser isolation. So part of our Zero Trust offering, we use remote browser isolation under the hood. And basically what remote browser isolation is it allows users to interact with a web browser in a environment that is remote, compared to actually accessing the browser directly from the client, right? So what we did is we wrapped Puppeteer library. So Puppeteer is currently open source, and the Google Chrome team is working on that. So we forked the Puppeteer library so that it works directly within Workers. And what happens is when you make a request within your Cloudflare Worker project and you try to create a browser, right? Or you try to send a request to, for example, navigate to a browser, what happens is that there is a web connection that is being created, right? So once the web connection is connected and the connection is established, our internal API, which we have built to enable the communication between the Chrome DevTools protocol and Cloudflare Workers, is then connected. And then going forward is possible for you to, for example, do something like create a new web page or navigate to a browser to, for example, take a screenshot, right? So this is essentially how it works under the hood. Within Workers, we have a Wrangler configuration file. Essentially what this is where you can configure specific things that you would like to have within your project. For example, if you want to set up bindings, if you want to add a compatibility flag, and so on. So for browser rendering to work within your project, you need to set up a browser binding. And a browser binding essentially would allow your worker to be authenticated to interact with a dedicated Chromium browser instance. And then secondly, you need to also set up a compatibility flag that says Node.js _ compat. So with these two things set up within your project, you can then start running browser rendering within your Worker script. Also, you would need to install the Cloudflare fork of Puppeteer, which is an NPM package, right? So once you import that, you can do things like launch a browser and, for example, create a new blank page or take a screenshot or make a PDF. There are so many different use cases for how you can use the Workers browser rendering API within your project. Like I mentioned, the Puppeteer Cloudflare package is on GitHub. If you'd like to check it out and see what's going on under the hood, that's available on GitHub. So over the course of my talk, I've mentioned a few examples of how you can actually do browser automation. One of that is taking screenshot of pages. I will show you examples of each of these as I go through them. You can also generate PDF from a web page. You can test your web application, write end-to-end test or automation test. You can use the browser rendering API to gather performance tests for your application or performance metrics. And finally, if you like to crawl a web page to retrieve specific information, for example, you want to get information about the current stock prices, or there are different reasons why you want to crawl a web page for your specific use case, you can also use this for that. So this is where I then go on to show you some examples of how we can do some of the use cases that I've mentioned within a Worker script. So the first demo I'd like to share here is how you can actually take a screenshot and then store the image that you've created in Cloudflare R2. For context, Cloudflare R2 is one of our object storage that we offer you, where you can store objects like images, PDFs, and then retrieve it to be publicly used. So it's kind of like a S3 version of what we offer, right? So this is the script for how you would do this. I don't know if that's legible enough, but I'll walk you through it. So what I intend to do with this demo is try to navigate to the Hacker News page and take a screenshot of that and then save the image that I've received to R2. So I'll head over to my VS Code. And you can see I have a lot of demos, so I'll just navigate to the specific one that I'm trying to run. So Cloudflare uses a tool called Wrangler. So Wrangler is our command line tool, and with Wrangler you can run your Cloudflare scripts or Worker script locally. You can also use Wrangler to deploy. You can use Wrangler to connect or create an R2 storage or bucket. So all of that, for that, I'll be using the Wrangler command to start these projects that I already have. So use Wrangler dev. Should be Wrangler dev remote. Doing live demos is actually very different from just going through it. Okay. I already have gone ahead to put this in my script, so I'll just run npm start. So it's npm start. Okay, what's going on now? Okay. So what happens is it's trying to authenticate, because I feel like I restarted my computer. So I'll try to do that here while that is running. Just give me a second. Okay. I think the internet is quite slow. This is. While that is running, I'll go back to the presentation and try to explain the code. If it works, then I show you how how I generated the current image that you see on screen. So right here, I have a worker script, right? It's currently importing the package Cloudflare Puppeteer, and I am setting types because I'm using TypeScript for this specific script. And what I'm doing essentially with this demo is I am setting a URL params that specifically says when I navigate to a specific URL, whether that's be google.com, hackernews.com, it should automatically create a screenshot using the browser API that comes from the Workers Rendering API. So online, so from line 19 and 20, is it visible enough for everyone? No? Good? Okay. Or we could do this. I can explain the code and then just go and show you the generated. It would have been nicer if I can show it to you directly. So yeah. So on line 19 and 20, essentially what I'm doing is I'm using the puppeteer.launch command to actually launch a browser. And then I'm going ahead to create a page. So create a page within the context of this is essentially creating a new tab. And then on line 23, I'm saying, navigate to the specific URL that I've provided in my query parameter, and then take a screenshot of that page. So the page object returns a lot of different properties. It returns like .screenshot, it returns .pdf, it returns eval to evaluate scripts within the context of your workers application. So for this specific one, I'm trying to create a screenshot, right? And after that, I specifically want to reformat the title of the image that I'm storing on R2 just sanitize it a bit. So I'm using a package called sanitize and specifically adding the title of the returned website that I tried to take a screenshot, and then I'm passing in a custom ID just so that if I try to take a screenshot of the Hacker News website a couple of times, I don't get the same file name stored in R2. So the next thing that I'm doing there is I already went ahead to create a bucket. On Cloudflare, if you'd like to create a bucket to store your images, all you need to do is run the command wrangler R2. Wrangler R2 bucket create. Oops. Okay, gift, you can type. Yeah, so these are the different commands you have within Wrangler. To create a bucket, you can use the Wrangler R2. Specifically, there is a create, a delete, so you can do all the different CRUD operations, create, delete, update, and so on. So what I did is I then used Wrangler to create an object, or a bucket rather, and then I'm sending in the image that was generated to my Cloudflare R2 bucket. And what I then do after that is just so that I can see that this was actually returned, I am returning back the image that was stored in R2 back when I run this command locally. So I'll go back to my browser, my slides right now, and I hope for the next demo that I do, it works. So basically, if you're trying to create a screenshot or automate the process of taking screenshots specifically because you want to use the intended screenshots for different tasks and you don't want to do that manually, you can use the browser rendering API to automate that task. Another thing that comes up is, what if you want to actually do, because something you need to know about the browser instance that is created is immediately after you perform your specific task, you close it, right? Using the browser.close command, right? So what if you want to, for example, generate 5 to 6 screenshots, right, simultaneously? How do you do that? So you can actually do that currently using something called durable objects. And essentially what this does for you, it allows you to persist your browser sessions, where for now, the current limit for a browser is around, like, you can only have 2 browsers running for a specific 60 seconds. So you can use durable object to extend that limit. So what I currently have right now is, within the same application that I tried to create, I want to, instead of creating just or taking a screenshot of just Hacker News, I want to go and take a screenshot of Hacker News in different viewports. For example, I want to take the screenshot for the desktop view, the mobile view, and so on, and then package all of that within a folder and store it to R2. So in order for me to do that, I need to set up a durable object. Essentially, a durable object will help me persist my state, and then I can give it a specific timeline where I want it to extend. So for right now, the current limit is 60 seconds, but then I'm using durable object to extend the 60 seconds by 10 seconds. So within this example code that I'm showing here, I have a string called keep alive in seconds, right, where I'm extending that by 10 seconds. So if I want to then take the screenshot, so this is the code for what I'm trying to explain. If I want to then take the screenshot, I would essentially have that running for an extra 10 seconds before the browser actually closes, right? And then after that, I do the same thing where I'm saving the specific screenshots that was created. This time, I am creating 3 different screenshots, right? I'm packaging that into a folder and then saving that to R2. So this is a way for you to actually escape the 60 seconds limit if, for example, you have a use case where you need to keep the browser running for an extended period of time. You can use durable objects to extend the limit by a few extra seconds, right? So that's how you can do persist browser storage. Following that, the other demo I'd like to show you is how you can actually generate a PDF. The specific example that I want to use is the current NDC conference agenda. So I would like to go to the website, take a PDF, save that PDF to R2. So hopefully this one works. Let me see. Let me connect to my phone if it makes sense, because the Wi-Fi is not working. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Not this. Thank you. Okay, hopefully this one then works. Still very slow. You know what? I will try to explain the demos as I go on. The good thing is I have an image within my slides of what they all look like. But after the talk, I'll create a GitHub repo with all the demos so you can check them out after. So the next demo I would like to show you is how to create a PDF from a website, specifically the NDC conference agenda. So I created a script, right? I'll navigate to that specific example. So what I'm doing here is very similar, right? Where I launch the Puppeteer instance using the puppeteer.launch and then passing the binding that I created. This would allow the specific worker script to connect to Puppeteer, and then I create a new page using the browser.newPage function. And from line 18 to line 23, that's where I'm actually doing the specific job that I would like the script to perform, which is navigate to the NDC agenda website. Because the reason why I'm passing in wait until is if I just do this directly, the page is still trying to load and the screenshots returned will be essentially empty. So I'm also passing a wait until DOM content is loaded to the specific command. And then I was able to go to the website and select the specific area of the page where the agenda is. And for that, I'm using the page.wait for selector to actually wait for that specific area within the page to show up before I then go on to take or generate the PDF, right? So after generating the PDF, I then go on to close the browser. The specific PDF that I created, I want to save the generated PDF to an R2 bucket. So I go on to use my buckets that I already generated using the binding mybucket.put, which essentially would select whatever file you're trying to upload and upload it to your R2 bucket. And what I do after that is once the file is uploaded, I then take the specific PDF that was returned and send it back to the browser so I can actually see what was generated. So I'll show you what that looks like. Hopefully I have an example. Yeah, so this was after, it's not the full PDF page, right? I was expecting to show you everything. But what happens after that is once I run the def command, then essentially what I just explained would happen. The browser instance will navigate to the NDC agenda and then wait for the specific selectors that I've specified for it to wait for, and then take a screenshot after that, rather than taking a screenshot, create a PDF and then send the specific PDF to R2, and then I'm returning it back to the browser. So if you have any use case for maybe generating a PDF on the fly and you don't want to have to, do this, you want to do it programmatically, this is essentially how you can actually achieve that. So the next use case I would like to show you is using the browser rendering API to perform web performance tests, or to measure web performance, right? There are tools that will help you do this, but if you want to actually go on to automate the process of doing it, you can actually use the browser rendering API to do it. So I'll navigate back to my examples. So this is another Cloudflare script that I've written for this specific purpose. The purpose is to try to navigate to a specific URL or a page and check or calculate the web performance of that page. And I'm looking for different metrics for this specific script. The first thing I do, again, is launch the Puppeteer instance and then navigate to the page using the page.goto and then passing in the URL. So I want to calculate different things. I want to calculate the JavaScript and CSS coverage for the specific URL that I've navigated to. And the page object that the API returns gives you several different ways that you can actually get back metrics. So you can easily pass in page.metrics and a list of different metrics will be returned back to you. But if you want to calculate specific things like time to first byte, largest contentful paint, and a lot of different things, you can also add code for you to do that. So what I'm doing here is I'm calculating the JavaScript and CSS coverage metrics for the specific URL that I've navigated to. And I also have another metrics where I'm getting the response start time, the request start time. All of this is possible to get directly from the API, right? So I'm returning everything, and then I'm also calculating the time to first byte for the specific URL that I've navigated to. And once I get all the metrics that I would like to collect, I'm then returning that back to the browser as JSON objects, and then I close the browser. So this is an example of how you can do or perform performance tests within your application. If you have a need for you to use, if you don't want to use a specific tool like Lighthouse, for example, and you would like to have very detailed and very specific types of performance metrics for your application, you can use the Workers Rendering API to do that. So this is an example of how you can do collect web performance metrics within your application. So for this example, what I did is then after running it, I navigated to Cloudflare.com and then, Hacker News rather. And after that, I get the performance metrics returned for that specific URL that I navigated to. Okay, these are some of the use cases and examples that you can use the Workers Rendering API for. Right now, this API is currently in open beta, and if you would like to try like some of the things I've shown to you today, or you have a use case where you're thinking, oh, this could be something I can try, you can scan the QR code or use the scan the QR code. I think that's the easiest way to do that, and then enter your details. We're slowly getting to GA, which is great. And I feel like eventually it will be accessible for everybody. But for now, you have to join the waitlist and then you get access to it. What are some features that are coming up that I am excited about? I showed you a demo of how you can persist storage using another tool called Durable Objects. But one thing that I'm excited about is that we are improving the browser sessions, meaning that you might not even have to do the extra step of connecting to a durable object. We're going to be extending the limits of the Workers browser rendering API and also adding an endpoint for you to check usage. So these are some of the incoming features that are coming to the Workers browser rendering API. If you'd like to learn more about this tool that I've shared, I would refer you to the documentation, which has a lot more about what you can do with it, some examples as well for you to see how you can actually perform different automation within your application. Also, if you'd like to, I will share my slides where you can then check out the blog posts that I have listed there. Essentially, these are announcements blog posts where we were specifically saying the reason why we created this and also how you can actually use it. So that brings me to the end. Thank you so much for joining me. If you would like to get access to the slides, you can scan the QR code right on screen. With that, I bring my presentation to a close. Also, if you have questions, I'm happy to take them as well. Yeah.